As real estate investors, we all know how important it is to create financial independence and generational wealth. But why? Why do you want these things? These are the kind of questions you need to be asking yourself if you want to grow and scale, but also if you want to understand the how. How do you get there? That's the conversation we had today with Derek Dombeck, who is a real estate investor, best-selling author, and a national speaker who is sharing how he's able to grow his portfolio working with other investors and raising over $25 million for his deals. If you are looking for financial freedom, you're looking to create generational wealth, and you want to understand how to do it, first you got to ask why and check out this conversation right here on Multifamily Insights. When you think you found a great deal, asking the right questions could be the difference in finding a stud or a dud. Listen, we've put together a new guide to help you out. It's called 7 Questions You Must Ask Before Investing in Apartments. Now, in this guide, you're going to learn how to uncover red flags, quickly identify underwriting risk, vet sponsors and team members, and confirm key assumptions. Now, this is a guide that's going to help you be a better investor, whether you're an active investor or you're a passive investor looking to partner with other operators. Asking better questions is the key to identifying great opportunities. So download this free guide. Go to our website, casmoncapital.com/7 questions. That's the number 7 questions. And you can access this free guide today. To make it easy on you, though, we've put a link in our show notes. So you go to show notes, you can click that link and access the guide right now. This guide's going to help you make better investment choices, asking the right questions to build your portfolio. So be sure to download it today. Now, as a successful investor, national speaker, and international best-selling author, Derek Dombeck has surfed the ups and downs of the market since 2003. Now, Derek's expertise ranges from creative deal structures, wholesaling, flipping, and being a landlord, not to mention lending through investments over the years. He's been involved in thousands of transactions throughout his career, and what sets him apart is his love for people and their success. Let's welcome to the show, Derek Dombeck.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. I always cringe when I hear my own bio, but it's interesting.
I'm not the only one. That's good to hear, man. It just shows you got some humility to you. That's all. Well, I did read the bio, right? So why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of the gaps, though, and add some life to it?
Yeah, well, the bottom line is I've got a PhD, which is a public high school diploma, and a work ethic. And from there, I've made plenty of mistakes over a couple decades in this business, and that's really where I speak and teach from now is not all the things that I've done great, but all the things that I did wrong. And when we were back in the 2000s, we built up a pretty nice portfolio, and then markets crashed, and we lost just about everything, and got forced into a decision. We either quit or we learn how to get creative, learn how to buy and control property without using banks. And that's what I love doing to this day. I don't use banks. I won't say never, but I rarely use banks, and have no desire to. So
Let's
that
dig
kind of
in on
fills
that,
in
man,
some
because
gaps.
I think that's interesting. One, I love the PhD, right? The public high school diploma.
You can use that.
Obviously,
I totally stole that.
I definitely wrote it down. It's already in the notepad. So, but basically, you really had this upbringing where you had to figure things out for yourself, right? Not necessarily collegiate educated, but really got into real estate, found some opportunities. The previous downturn, right, early 2000s, realized, okay, we got to figure some stuff out here, and you ended up getting creative. And you don't use banks. You haven't really used banks in years. Tell us more about that. What was the situation there? Why were banks not an option? So we can get some context of how you were able to navigate that situation.
For sure. So you don't know what you don't know. And many of us, especially like myself, I will just jump out of the airplane, build the parachute on the way down. It's just my nature. But back then, we had good credit. Every bank in our region was fighting over our business, and it was easy. And the thing I think was one of my bigger mistakes was taking the easy road and not learning the other alternative methods until it was too late, until I had to. And so when banking relationships die, which is far more common today than it was back then you had a specific loan officer that you worked with, and typically they'd been with the bank for years, and it was very relationship based. Now those relationships go away, and so does your track record with that bank. I mean, everybody's essentially just a file. And I mean, if you think about it, 20 years ago, you actually walked into the bank, you cashed your paycheck, you knew the people that worked at the bank. Now, nobody even walks into a bank. It's all online, right? There's no emotional relationship anymore. And so it's easy for the banks to say no to your deals because there's no emotional attachment. It's just a file. And who's really controlling your deals? The bank is. There's plenty of multifamily investors right now that are getting their loans called due or they're coming due, and the banks are either choosing to not rewrite them or they're going to rewrite them at terrible terms. Who's really controlling your business? And that was the realization I had back then was, moving forward, I always want to be in control of my business. So when I'm dealing with private individuals, even though it may cost me more money in interest or maybe some equity in a deal, or however we structure it, I would much rather pay my friend and better his family life than pay an institution so they can build a bigger, more beautiful building, right?
Yeah, and you talk about control, right? And you started by talking about relationships. And it's an important distinction because, to your point, I was thinking about when I got my first bank account, and the teller that worked there, that banker, we were on a first name basis. She knew my dad. My dad had to help co-sign for my bank account, right? Um, and that was a relationship, right? And you get to know these people. You try to talk about what you're trying to do. I actually brought that person on to be on my advisory board when I launched this nonprofit when I was still back at home, right? She was just, when you're a young kid, people, they try to help you out. And I had no clue what I was doing, by the way. but she was, willing. But to your point on relationships, that was a nice relationship for me to have. And to your point now, you don't have that as organically now. Most people don't go into the bank. There's online banking. Even the lenders on these larger deals, like I haven't met any of my lenders in person. I have no idea who they are outside of the ones in my local market. So you're right. It becomes much easier to just look at a file, look at the numbers, stick to your protocols and your processes. And it's harder for investors to build that rapport, the relationship, and kind of navigate that landscape. So I completely understand your thought process to say, you know what? Let me work with folks who actually care about me or care about this deal, care about success, as opposed to just treating me like a number in a file and putting me into a spreadsheet and either or it's going to spit out either yes or no. Um, was there something specific that happened though, where the banks either didn't lend to you or foreclosed on you, or
Oh
something
yeah.
that was an incident that made you realize just the fragility of that banking relationship?
Yeah, what happened was 2007. And so at that point, we were buying rental properties and cash flowing properties here in Wisconsin where I live, but we were also buying and developing properties in Florida. And so at that 2007 through 2009, I had 8 properties that went into default and were in foreclosure. And we weren't bankable anymore. And most of those lenders were, brought to me through mortgage brokers. The mortgage brokers were now out of business. The lenders that I did have a relationship with, they got either walked out of the bank or the bank closed, or fill in the blanks with what happened to their jobs. So we weren't bankable, and we had to transition from buying and holding into flipping just to keep cash coming in to cover the negatives. I mean, it was really rob from Peter to pay Paul for a long time. And then I met a business partner that I was in business with for 10 years, and he had never used a bank ever in his career. He always raised private capital. So that was my introduction into how to, deal with people instead of institutions. And we were raising money for our own deals, and we got to a point where we had more investors than we could, had deals. So we couldn't keep their money busy. But we also established relationships with other people that needed the money. So we started a lending company, and it was just a side project to begin with, a couple loans here and there. And that organically grew over a period of years. From 2020, like right when COVID hit, until the end of 23, which is when my business partner bought me out, we were averaging about 20 to 25 hard money loans a month, and in the Midwest. So that was about $3 to $3.5 million a month going out the door in loans. And a lot of the transactions that I've been involved in are from that advisory side, underwriting these loans, because I did the comps on every loan we ever did. We didn't have appraisal done because we had way more experience in our market than appraisers do, and we trust ourselves and our experience more. So I think to date I've raised somewhere in excess of $25 million. It's always been, the lending business was arbitrage. We'd pay our investors 9-10% return. We'd lend it out at 12 to 13 and a half plus some points. And again, the relationship side of this was where I made my mistakes early in my career. Building a network, I did not do that early in my career. And those, regardless of what genre of real estate investing you're in, having that network is really huge, because it's not if, it's when you have a problem, you need somebody to turn to, and somebody that's going to be an ally. And that's not the bank, right? I can't call my bank and say, you know what, my tenants didn't pay me this month, so I can't pay you. They're going to say no, and they're going to file foreclosure. Can I call my private investor and say, hey, we just had this challenge, tenants aren't paying us, we're going to need a month or two to solve the problem. Here's how we're going to solve the problem. So we have a plan. Will you work with us on this? And if you've taken care of your investors, they will take care of you. So, and again, that does not matter what genre of real estate you're in either. I don't care if you have a $20,000 investor or a $20 million investor. Take care of your investors. Keep that relationship alive, and they get paid first, right? Don't be pulling profits and then defaulting on what you owe your investors. That, not only is that not right, but that spreads like wildfire, and your reputation is everything in business.
Derek, you mentioned being able to raise 25 million or so for these deals that you are doing, which is a huge number, but also goes to show kind of the effort and work you were able to do for those investors. And talking about building that reputation and sticking through it. Right now, you alluded to the fact that a lot of multifamily investors are going through some hardships where some of those deals are not panning out. Some of those lenders are, starting to squeeze down on these investors and starting to either foreclose on assets or, working with them to, negotiate some terms. For your standpoint, what can investors do, particularly if they work with passive investors? What can they do in this environment to make sure they protect themselves, protect their investment, and ultimately protect their investors?
Well, let's go from the passive side. If you're a passive investor first, it depends. If you got involved in a syndication and the syndication is in a junior lien position behind a bank, the answer is it's probably too late, right? I interview on my show a lot of syndicators. So the Generations of Wealth podcast is my show, and a lot of syndicators, that's their model. They're going to raise for what they need for rehab and for their 25 to 35% down payment and get the rest as bank financing. The bank is always in a safe position in that case. They're at 65, 70% LTV, even with the cap rates changing, interest rates changing. The banks are still in a fairly safe position. It's the syndication that's not. And I think most passive investors, and I know you talk about this on your show quite a bit, it is a leap of faith for sure. I mean, every investment is, and you want to try and do everything you can to minimize the risk. But if you're in a position where you're in a bad deal as a passive investor and there's a bank that's threatening foreclosure or anything else, do you cut your losses now and just walk away? I don't know. Because a lot of these syndications are having capital calls right now and saying everybody's got to put in another 100 grand. Well, what is their true plan? Are you ever going to get that money back? Or, maybe you're already out 100, 200, 300, 500. Is it time to just cut your losses? From the other side of the coin, if you are the person raising the money or doing the deal, to me, you should be, as I said earlier, your investors come first. I don't care what it takes, but you have to make it right. Even if they lose money today and you file bankruptcy and you end up flat broke, someday in the future, you should make it right, if at all possible. And, we've had deals go bad. Anybody that's been in this business for any period of time has. And I had one this last year. It was a weird deal. And I had an investor on it that was on a participating note. And I like using participating notes, meaning the lender gets a certain amount of interest, which they get paid monthly, but they also get a part of the upside when I sell or refinance. And in this case, we projected that my investor was going to get double-digit returns, but the deal went sideways. And in the end, he just got his 6%, return. But he's still an investor of mine to this day because he knows we stayed in communication. We talked frequently. I kept him in the loop on everything that was going on. And without going into a lot of detail, we essentially bought a house, and we bought it from a husband and wife, did not know the wife was not of sound mind and body, and she signed all the documents. He was, in fact, her guardian, her legal guardian, did not disclose. So the courts actually stepped in and tried to reverse the sale because it was just like a minor signing documents. It wasn't valid. So it just turned into this big old, court case and we did nothing wrong, but we got caught up in it. So the point of that is my investor was taken care of. He's still willing to invest with me today. And I just said, you know what? You didn't get the return on the last one. I'll put you in a better deal moving forward so you can get higher returns to make up for it. And that's the difference between dealing with people versus institutions.
And I think you also get to the core of, we're evaluating who we want to work with, like the core and the essence of the character of the people. And when you talk about the institutions versus people, that's it, right? Institutions don't have character. They don't have essence, right? I recall when COVID first hit, we did not take any of those PPPs, no loan modifications, nothing. And I had one deal where we already were having a hard time. And I'm like, man, but I don't want to ask help. We'll figure it out. And we did. We figured it out. We got that thing turned around, and we were in a place where we wanted to refinance. And I went to my lender. It was a local lender. And I said, hey, we're ready to refinance. Can you tell me the terms? And they were like, hey, great. And the terms they gave me were basically the same loan I already had. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. We had a construction loan. The value is up here now. Like, we've certainly increased the value by, probably $500,000 or so. And this was a smaller deal. This was like a $700,000, $800,000 deal. And we'd increased the value to about 1.3 million. And they were like, yeah, we're not going to use that ARV number. We're going to base it off of the initial amount of capital we gave you, or they gave something else that they used. I'm like, that makes literally no sense, because you're using the amount of money you gave me and you're going to cap that at, say, 90%. Like, of course you're not going to refinance. And I'm like, guys, during COVID, I didn't ask you for any help. You can look at the financial statements and you understand how the property is operating. You're telling me after I've done all this work, you're not going to help me. And by the way, I can very easily just go to another lender and they would value it off of the current value and not this craziness that you're doing. And they were like, yep, sorry, that's how we operate. And it goes back to what you said. Like, there's some common sense and there's some business practices, but institutions don't really have a soul. So in that case, you're dealing with people. And that's why even when you're dealing with larger businesses, business to business is still people to people. So the individual that you're working with, the individuals that you're talking to, you want to understand them. You understand how they do business, how they operate. Are they going to stand by their word? Are they going to go strictly by the written documents, the legal documents, that PPM, and stand behind that to say, well, technically, I don't have to do blah, blah, blah. Or are they going to be someone who says, you know what? Hey, we didn't do what we thought we were going to do. Let me find a way to make you whole. Let me find a way to take care of you. And ultimately, you want to deal with good people. And it's the reason you said that investor who didn't get the return that you projected is still willing to work with you because they knew you would do everything you can to make them whole. And for any investor that's in a deal that's not working as well today, keep that in mind. I mean, market's been hard on a lot of investors, right? So a lot of deals are not working. but get at the core and the character of the individual. Are they being honest and transparent with you? Are they doing everything they can to protect you and protect your interests? Or are they, running and hiding and putting your head in the sand? Uh, Figure out the character of the person and let that inform how you move forward. You've got you've done a lot as well with the podcast, and you're writing books, and you're really trying to help other people learn how to create generational wealth. Can you talk about maybe the transition from focusing on building up your own portfolio to recognizing that, hey, there's a group of folks out there who need this kind of education. They need the resources and information, and you wanted to be the one to help share that.
Yeah, and if you can see the video, if you're just listening to this, my mantra at Generations of Wealth is live your vision, love your life. And when I again started building a network and really embraced having people to fall back on and lean against, one of them was a mentor of mine who said, you don't have a clear vision for what you want for your life. And if you don't know what you want for your personal vision, how can you really build a business that supports your personal vision? So I'll give you the exact scenario that most of us have, right? We as entrepreneurs will work our butts off 5, 6, 7 days a week to get out of a job. So we want to get out of the 9 to 5 so we can work a 5 to 9. And then we lie to ourselves and say we're doing all of this so that someday we're going to reap the rewards and we're going to have this awesome life and spend all the time with our families and all the things we've always wanted to do, and the boats and the cars and the vacations. Well, someday doesn't always come the way you think it's going to. And for some people, you die young or you get sick or whatever, someday is gone tomorrow. So that mentor really walked me through, and I'm pretty hard-headed, so it took him a while, but figuring out what do you want your personal life to look like day to day. Take a week-long calendar and just map out your perfect day every day. And how much time does that take? So maybe I want to wake up at 5 and I want to work out for an hour, and then I want some quiet time to read a book, and then I want to have breakfast with my kids, and blah, 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 right? There may only be 10, 15, 20 hours a week left to run a business. Okay. Now go build a business that fits within that time frame and supports your personal vision. That's what live your vision, love your life is all about. And it doesn't happen overnight. And there's certainly ups and downs. We all have turmoil in our life. We all have things that unexpectedly happen. But if you don't have it in front of you all the time to know what you're actually working for and working towards. And this is not a business plan, by the way. This is a vision, and it should be written as if it's already happening. There's no specific way to do it. Some people might have bullet points. I like to write my vision in story form, but writing it as if it's already happening. And then you're going to start to see things that happen unexplained, right? Like there was a point in time where my former partner and I said, we really want to grow our lending business. And we were running a real estate acquisition company, and we were running a coaching program, and we were, running the lending business as kind of a side project. And we weren't focused on any of it. We just had a whole bunch of crap going on at once, and it all kind of worked. So we both had clear visions on what we wanted personally, meaning how much time were we willing to put into this without affecting our families. And then after we had that in writing, we made the business plan. And within 6 months, our lending company skyrocketed from a few very small moves. But it was because now we were focused. So the business plan comes into play after you have a clear vision. So the hardest thing for most people to do is dream and come up with a vision without engineering how they're going to do it. And that's not putting together a vision. You want to imagine the people at Disney World that are coming up with all the crazy stuff that Disney does, the rides, the shows, all this stuff. They don't care how Disney organization's actually going to do it. Their job is to just dream. Okay. So when you start your vision, just dream. And dream big, as if money and time is not a factor. After you have that figured out, now you start figuring out the how.
I love the way you talked about that because the vision, and some people struggle with this, but the vision, you're talking about really understanding what you want first.
Mhm.
And most people really start with the tactical business or idea and try to scale it. Like you said, working 5, 6, 7 days a week, putting in a lot of hours with this goal of becoming financially independent or creating generational wealth or whatever the case may be. But they don't really have clarity on the lifestyle they're trying to create and the life they're trying to live. And you're talking about really reverse engineering that and starting with what does life look like? See yourself
Well,
in the future. What does that vision look like? And then finding a business or creating a business that fits the lifestyle. Go ahead.
let's just give you an example, John. Most people start in their vision with stuff, right? The house, the
Mhm.
cars, the vacations. And once you start getting stuff, you realize it's not all that fulfilling. The new car smell goes away. Pretty soon it's just another car, right? But let's take one example. Maybe you want a beach house, okay? And a beach house is going to be a couple $1,000,000. And you think, I'm going to work for the next 20, 30 years to someday get the beach house of my dreams. Why can't you have that today? So figure out, John, if you had a beach house, pick a Caribbean island that you would maybe want to be at.
Oh man. Let's go Jamaica.
Jamaica. Okay. So if there was a house that you could buy in Jamaica today, John, for $1,000,000, we'll keep the numbers lower, $1,000,000, and you're buying it for me. I'm going to sell your house for $1,000,000. Um, Now you have probably some debt, unless you had that much cash, but you got some debt. You have maintenance. You have security to worry about. You have hurricanes to worry about, insurance, all of these things. And if you had this beach house in Jamaica, John, how much time would you actually spend there in a calendar year?
Probably a month.
A month. Okay, great. How much do you think it would cost you for $1,000,000 beach house just to maintain and upkeep, even if you owned it free and clear? How much do you think it would cost you?
No idea, man, but I'm gonna guess maybe $100,000.
I would say 10% is probably a pretty good guess, right? So $100,000. John, go on Airbnb right now, not during the show, but go on Airbnb, any of you, go on Airbnb and look up what it would cost to rent a really nice house worth far more than $1,000,000 in Jamaica for a month. It's under 20 grand. Okay. So why can't you have your dream house today for 20 grand, which is one house flip? It's half a house flip. And if you're in the multifamily, just put it into whatever, terms you need to. But for me, half a house flip could pay for my beach house 1 month in Jamaica. And I don't have to maintain it. I don't have to worry about when hurricanes hit, insurance, is somebody breaking in, any of that stuff. And oh, by the way, John, if you bought that house today and then you started spending time there and you realized we want to be on the other side of the island, you can't without selling the house, going and find another one. Well, or you can go to Jamaica and spend a month in the Grill this year, and next year you can go spend a month in Kingston. The next year you can go spend it, right. You can bounce around. So you can have your vision elements today without busting your butt for 30, 40 years and maybe ending up with it in the future.
And Derek, the thing I love about what you're hitting at is a lot of people when they create their vision or they're dreaming big, they get so fixated on the first pathway of doing that. So to your point, I want to own a beach house.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got to go save, $2 million, or I got to go save 30% to buy it, a $2 million property, and that's it. So they just, oh, I don't have that, so I can't do that. I got to wait until I can save enough money, and that's where the dream goes to die because it's going to take 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, to save that kind of money for them versus what you're saying is flipping that equation. And instead of going straight to the first answer, ask yourself, well, how can I own this dream house? And when
Yeah.
you ask better questions, it's easier to see how you can get to the vision, right? Because the goal is not necessarily to own the beach house. The goal is to go stay at the beach house for a certain amount of time. And who cares who owns it technically, right? Unless you want it for family purposes, which is something different. But
But
The
that's
goal
actually
is to take that
something,
vacation. Yeah, go
John,
ahead.
that's something that you've got to be careful of too, is you should, the question you should be asking yourself during your vision is why?
Yeah.
Why do I want this? If you put in your vision, I want to make $1 million a year. Why? Why not 900,000? Why not 1.2? It's not the dollar amount. I don't want to see dollar amounts in a vision. I want to see the why. I want to see what you want to do with that money. So if you said, well, I want to make $1 million a year so I can buy a beach house, okay, but you could maybe make $200,000 a year and have the use of the same beach house. What's the why? Friend of mine, he wanted to own a really nice boat. Okay. And I mean, we're talking, a 40, 50-foot boat. He could have 20 to 30 friends all hang out and all the expense. And where he lives, he would only use that boat 3 months a year. Well, out of the 3 months a year, he's probably getting together with his friends 3 or 4 weekends. So you've got 8 days that he really, and his why was, I love entertaining. I love getting together with my friends and being the center of the entertainment. Can he not go and rent a boat for those same 8 days, do the exact same thing for a heck of a lot less money and energy and stress? Of course he can. So it's the why. What he didn't want to own a boat. He wanted to spend time with his friends and be their source of enjoyment. That brings him fulfillment. So the main question as you go through your vision is why? Why?
Derek, I love the clarity there. For folks who struggle with this, what advice and tips would you give them to gain that clarity, to ask better questions to themselves, and ultimately get clarity on their vision and the path to help them execute on it?
I mean, if you can find somebody to help you through it, to kind of interview you, and I have friends that have done that for me, and mentors and stuff, and I have helped people through that process as well. But it's asking those questions. The people that have the hardest time are the analytical brained engineer types, right? Because they want to figure out the how way before the why and the what. So having somebody to bounce this off of, and then once you have your vision, by the way, this is a living, breathing document. You don't do this once and it's done. This should be increased and changed over time. As I mentioned earlier, most people start with stuff. Then it goes more philanthropical, more, maybe I want to go and do some mission work. Maybe I want to do some charity or volunteer work, things that are giving back. So as you grow in your life and in your business, keep changing your vision, stepping it up. And that doesn't mean stepping it up necessarily financially if that's not what you want, but stepping it up in ways that you're always pushing yourself to something bigger and better. Bigger and better in your eyes, not in somebody else's eyes. Do not filter your vision. And I'm guilty of this, and most people are. Don't filter your vision off what somebody else would want or you think they would want. Okay. This is one of the hard lessons in my life that I've had to learn is, like, if you're married, for example, or you have business partners, do your vision separately first. Then only after they're done, collaborate and maybe, make some concessions, right? But I have seen this happen, and quite frankly, it's happened to me too. You get a clear vision, it might tell you you're not with the person you should be with. You're not with the spouse you should be with. You're not with the partner you should be with. I mentioned my business partner and I, he bought me out a little over a year and a half ago. It wasn't like we had this big fight. It was that we no longer had visions that aligned. But it was a good thing because now we're both living and going the direction that we should be going and want to be going. And we're friends. And we did it the right way. But you might fill out your vision and figure out your spouse has a completely different vision. And, or your business partner, or it doesn't matter. Right. So it is a double-edged sword. And you got to be aware of that. But having somebody to collaborate with is very, very helpful. And once you have it done, make it known to people. Make it public. No, you're not putting it on Facebook, but tell your colleagues, your friends, the people in your network, hey, I have these, aspirations to start a nonprofit and help people that, have adoption or infertility challenges. And because this is something that, my family, myself went through, with my children. We had infertility issues and all these things. So I want to do that. And that's part of my vision. Well, if I keep that to myself, nobody can really help me realize my vision. If I tell the masses, I'm telling you publicly on your podcast, I want a nonprofit organization to help families that have problems having kids. Now I'm making it public. My vision is public. Opportunities just all of a sudden start coming in, right? Because there's other people that want to help. So you got to let people know what your goals are and what your vision is.
I love it, man. Derek, great stuff there. I really appreciate you sharing that. Hey, for listeners who want to learn more, check out Derek on his website. Go to derekdombeck.com. And I know you've got some books that you've authored. I think you have some of that information available on your website. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so there's a guy named Kyle Wilson. He's an incredible man down in Texas. He was the man behind Jim Rohn. If anybody knows Jim Rohn, the business speaker and author. And so Kyle asked me to be a part of a collaboration book called Next Level Your Life. And I was also a part of his next book called The Transformational Journey. And it's a collection of authors from all different walks of life. And we all have a chapter in that book. And Next Level Your Life hit Amazon bestseller in international categories and domestic, I think over 40 different categories. Transformational Journey went over 50 different categories. So you can get the digital version. Just go to derekdombeck.com and there will be a link there. Check them out. And, at the end of the day, the network is the key. I got to meet Kyle, and next thing you know, Kyle's asking me to be, an author. And remember, I just have a PhD, so not exactly a writer, but through a writing coach and everything else, that's been a great chapter in my life as well. So I'd love to share that with you guys.
Yeah, check that out. Go to derekdombeck.com and check out that book. Really appreciate you sharing that for our listeners today. Right now, we're going to transition and go to our round of insights. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the mastermind button today. Hey, Derek, give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Well, I kind of touched on it already, not building a network, and then realizing it. And now, like every day I want to meet somebody new. Every day I want to increase my network.
Love it. Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for our listeners.
This is going to be kind of generic, but I'm not techie, but what ChatGTP is doing is pretty insane at this point. And we are using that along with our real estate CRM, and doing actually, I don't know the resource we use Go High Level for our marketing, but we are now using the inbound AI answering bot, and we have her trained. Her name is Simone. That's been pretty cool. Just to have somebody there to answer that phone 24/7 and schedule things for us. I think that's, whether we like it or not, that's the wave of the future.
Give me, besides the 2 you're a part of, give me a book that you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Pitch Anything and Flip the Script, both by Orrin Claff. Part of my journey is I had to learn how to talk and speak to people in ways that nobody really teaches. And I do have a negotiations training, but a lot of what I learned about frame control and controlling the narrative through a social interaction was through those 2 books, Orrin Claff, Flip the Script, and what I already lost it.
Pitch Anything.
Pitch Anything was the first one, and then Flip the Script was the follow-up. So they should be read in that order, by the way.
I love it, man. Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
I try to get up about 5:30 every morning and just have quiet time for about half an hour. And it's something that I didn't do for most of my career until the last 2-3 years. In that time, I will most likely be on my phone, but doing something that is not work related and not stress related, but just quiet time, because as soon as about 7 a.m. starts, it's go time. And we're all glued to those dang phones anyways. I'm not a person that can sit down and read a book. I do a lot of audio books because for whatever reading puts me to sleep. So that quiet time might just be an audiobook. Just something like that. Kind of start the day off in a positive spirit.
You talked about networking. What's your number one insight for building a strong network?
It depends on if you're a person-to-person person like myself. I like being face-to-face. I like going to events, shaking hands, and having those interactions. And I feel like they're more genuine and it's easier for me to connect. But if that's not possible, anything you can do to be in online chats, or certainly your local real estate groups, meetup groups, anything like that you can do. I've been leading and hosting a RIA for 13 years now, I think, and but then now I'm a national speaker and fly to other events and speak at other people's events, and that gets me to grow my network. So I like the face-to-face.
I love it. All right, you are out in Wisconsin. Give us your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Nobody would know it anyways, but we have these small little supper clubs that still exist in Wisconsin, and Friday night fish fries are a thing here. So just going to our local small supper club down the road and having a beer, having a fish fry, especially when you travel as much as I do. Honestly, people don't know it, but when you live out of a suitcase, whether that's for a job or for your business, eventually all the airports look the same, hotels look the same, restaurants look the same. And I just want to be at home or local, eating something off the grill, or you know what I mean? So my favorite one, nobody would have known what it is anyways, but I like the small places that may or may not pass health inspection, but they're damn good food.
I love it, man. Derek, great information, man. I really enjoyed our conversation. You talked about a few things. Big thing was really not using banks, being more creative, focusing on networks and working with individuals instead of institutions for your capital needs. That way you can partner, you have a little bit more flexibility, and you can have that win-win relationship. You're not limited to, whatever the policies of the day are, or whatever, the template or the spreadsheet has to say about whether or not a deal works. You can work with real people, understand what they're looking for, and ultimately have more flexibility there. You also talked about networking, building strong relationships, growing and scaling what you're doing, but also having a vision for your life, having a vision of what you want to do, and asking the tough question, why? Why do I want this? Why this, not that? And if you can do that, then you can be more creative on the how you actually accomplish that vision. So really great insights to help all of our listeners just really take advantage of the opportunities that we have. We obviously know life isn't promised. So take advantage of the time you have. Get clarity on your goals. Why do you want these goals? How can you achieve them today as opposed to waiting 20 years in the future? I think it's really helpful for all of us to be more proactive in our approach. Again, for listeners that want to learn more, check them out. It's derekdombeck.com. We'll put a link on our show notes. Thanks again for being a great guest and coming on the show. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.